Hey everybody, I'm Mark from ApplyGodsWord.com, a place where we apply the Bible to your life. And today my wife Bethany and I are doing something a little bit different. This is our first Q&A video. So last week I sent out a post asking for questions, and you guys graciously offered a bunch of great questions. So in this video, we're going to do our best to answer those. And just so you know, we did not prep at all. So we wanted to be totally natural. We'll see how it turns out.
Yes.
You ready?
Oh.
All right. So drums and cymbals, that's the person's YouTube handle name there. The question is this: how can I trust that God has someone out there for me? The majority of the guys who have liked me are guys that I'm not attracted to. Does God just want me to keep waiting? What would you say to drums and cymbals, Bethany?
Well, I would say that being attracted to the person that you marry is something important, but I guess, do they all make you barf at the thought? Because sometimes when you get to know somebody, they might become more attractive. So I wouldn't say that that's like you could never become more attracted to that person.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe initially you're not attracted to them, but the more you learn about them, and
yeah, you actually have a good friend. We won't name any names or anything, but there was a guy that really liked her, and she didn't immediately like him as much as he liked her. And over time, though, she got to know him as a friend, and then her feelings really started changing, and she really did, her attraction did grow for him. So it is important, and I actually have a whole video on how important is physical attraction, so I'll leave a link for that, or you can look that up on my channel. But to answer the first part of your question, how can I trust that God has someone out there for me? Well, that's something I've talked a lot about on this channel. You don't know if God has called you for sure to marriage or to singleness. All you can do is be faithful in each situation that God has placed you in. And then that gives you the best opportunity to receive God's best for you. So if God has called you to a life of singleness, he's called you to be faithful to him during that life of singleness. However, if you're someone who wants to be married and you want to glorify God in marriage, statistically speaking, you probably will get married, because the majority of Christians are called to marriage. So you can't really know for sure, but if you want to honor God in marriage, and that's a desire that you have on your heart, it's very likely that he does have someone for you. So, yeah. All right, let's go to the next question. Alex Kim Edits says this: how can you stop longing for a relationship which you cannot get? How can you stop longing for a relationship that you cannot get? What are your thoughts there?
I would just say keep moving forward. Don't keep going back to those places where, you are reminded of that relationship. I would just keep moving forward, do new things, and just keep getting closer to the Lord. And if there's a void there that you keep taking to that relationship, maybe the Lord's not giving it to you because he wants to fill that void and not the relationship.
That's good. I like that. Yeah, very practical. I think I would just add to that, or just say, how can you stop longing for a relationship? Well, I don't think feelings ever just turn on and off. Yeah. So it's not something that you can just I really like someone and now next day I just don't. Because feelings just don't work that way. But giving yourself distance away from the source of those feelings can really help. I was actually on a walk earlier today, and I was thinking about this topic a little bit, and just thinking about like getting outside. And people like go on a walk in nature to get away, right? You like want to get away from work, get away from stress. And so you literally distance yourself from it and you go on a walk and you go through nature, and that kind of helps you reset. Mm-hmm. So I would say that, it helps to get over someone or stop longing by getting away from the source of those feelings. And like what Bethany said, keep moving forward. Don't keep looking back. Don't keep focusing on all those things you don't have. Focus on what God is leading you to do rather than obsessing on what he isn't leading you to do. Mm-hmm. Okay, Angelic Sparkles says this. Sounds good. Would you... Oh, wait. Would you consider doing a live Q&A with questions in chat? Angelic Sparkles, we will consider it, but this is not live.
Thank goodness.
Second part of the question. How to handle dating when your church is not active with singles, or you don't have a church home, or there are not a lot of Christ-centered men around. I have a topic question. Can you do a video on how to have a spirit-led dating life? Thanks. So, lot there. What pops out to you? What would you say there?
You could church hop. There's lots of churches out there that do that.
Do not church hop. I repeat. Do not church hop to find a husband. I think that you don't have to leave your church, but I also don't think it's wrong to visit other churches and like do both. I feel like it's kind of cultish when a church starts like feeling weird if you ever visit another church. Yeah. Like, it's okay to be a part of other things other churches are doing and still have a home church. So you don't think you need to just limit to that. But I also would say I wouldn't view church as like a primary, like the main reason you go to church is to date or to find somebody, because church has a way bigger role than that in our lives. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't like deduct I'm single because my church doesn't have a lot of singles there.
Right.
Because church has a much bigger role in our lives than meeting other potential spouses. Mm-hmm. That's okay to do that. It's good to do that there. But
you want to marry a Christian guy, so where are the Christian men out there? But one thing I did think of too is just like, where do you feel called to serve? Like, is there a place that you can serve in your community that is a Christian-based organization? Like, I don't know, a homeless shelter or a women's shelter, or I just think of that. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, I'm sure there's lots of other things out there, but...
Yeah. Well, how about her last part? She says, can you do a video on how to have a spirit-led dating life?
I don't know. I would just say, how do you walk with God each day? And
a spirit-led dating life really flows out of having a spirit-led life.
Yeah.
Like what Bethany just said, like, how do you walk with God every day? That should just be an overflow into your dating life. Because if you're all of a sudden thinking like, well, I'm really not walking with God that much, I don't really read my Bible that much, I don't really pray that much, but once I start dating, I'm really going to ramp it up. Yeah. So that I have a spirit-led dating life. That's not going to happen. Right. Like, it's actually going to be harder when you start dating. So whatever you want to be in the future, you have to start training for it now. Yeah. You know, if you want to have a spirit-led dating life, you got to have a spirit-led single life. Yeah. Starting right. I got to write that one down. That's a video right there. So Helen, I am blessed, asks this. Is it okay for a believer with more spiritual maturity to be married to a believer of less maturity? Does spiritual maturity matter when choosing a partner? So I actually have a video and an article directly about that question. It's called, that very question, is it okay to date someone who's less spiritually mature? And in that video, I talk about the differences between being unequally yoked and being with someone who's a Christian, but just a little less mature. Mm-hmm. So we won't talk about that question too much because I did a whole video on it. But do you have any other thoughts, or is that pretty much...
Yeah, I mean, if you're both believers,
right.
I think it'd be impossible for you to be at the exact spiritual level.
Right.
And what does that mean, like... one's been walking with God longer, or you just understand more of the Bible? Like, where does that, I think...
Yeah. So, yeah, it's a great question, so I just want to keep talking about it. But there's basically, you guys have probably heard me talk about this before, but like, there's like different tiers of importance with theology. You know, a tier 1 issue is where it's a matter of salvation. Like, you're not a Christian if you don't have this right. If he doesn't believe in the Trinity and you do, you know, you're unequally yoked. Tier 2 issue is something that's really important. It would like affect what church you go to, like if you're Presbyterian or Baptist, or if you believe in like different types of baptisms or communion, like big topics, you know. But you still would consider each other Christian, but you're just not there on a very important Christian topic. That would be tricky. If you have a tier 2 issue, it's not impossible to date or marry someone like that, but I would caution you. A tier 3 issue is just like normal disagreements on like whatever you're reading the Bible and you think it means that and you think it means this, but it's really not that big of a deal, big picture. So there you go. Let's see. Chell Zelda asked this: what does it mean when a guy in person shows interest, but the texting is not always there? And how do you know if God is telling you to wait or move forward with this person?
Texting is tricky. I don't think that should be the only sign.
Good. I like that. I wasn't sure how I was going to answer that. I'm glad you went. That's good. Yeah, like, what does it mean when a guy in person shows interest, but the texting is not always there? I would probably just go with that. Like, texting, some people just text differently.
Yeah.
People have different texting etiquette.
They do.
Even you guys all would probably know, like, if you text your parents or you text your friend, like, they text differently, you know? And so everyone texts differently. Some people feel like it's okay to, like, wait a few days to respond.
Right.
Other people get really offended if you don't immediately text back. So probably the best tip is to not use that as a big sign.
Yeah.
Maybe I would just say, like, if they're consistent.
Right.
You can kind of know, like, if someone's mad at you by if they're, like, normally text right back and then they never text.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of like,
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, I wouldn't rely too much on that. I would look for some other signs that might be a little bit more clear, like, are they pursuing you? Do they seem to be liking you? If they're not, then it probably means he doesn't really like you.
Yeah.
All right. Amanda Anima, what were the biggest adjustments and surprises learned post-marriage? And what's the best way to assess a person's lifestyle/home habits, considering you can't live together prior to marriage? That is a great question, Amanda. Really like that one. I see Bethany's thinking hard. She doesn't know what to say. No.
I don't know what to reveal.
Oh, that's what I saw when you're married, you can see the look of concern. I thought the look of concern was she didn't know what to say, but the look of concern was, I have so much to say.
I have something to say.
I don't want to embarrass you.
He's probably going to edit this.
Let's see.
Because
Go ahead.
when I went to your house before we were married, he didn't even have sheets on his bed.
Oh, that's too far.
The sheets were all messed up.
Look, when I was single,
I think there was a sleeping bag on it.
I was going to say, when I was single, I found it easier to use a sleeping bag rather than the traditional bed sheets.
You can't go
because
by how a man lives before he is married, because I have changed this man.
I was pretty young. I was like 19, 20 when we first started dating.
It doesn't matter. There was a mattress I saw with no sheets on it.
It's true. I'm not going to lie. And if there's any guys out there, you don't care. Right? If you guys are a guy watching, comment below and let me know if you think of me. If you think less of me now, comment below. Or if you don't think less of me, comment below. Women, I don't need you to comment because I know you already do think less of me now. I already know you're going to unsubscribe now because when I was 20, I used a sleeping bag on my bed instead of traditional sheets and blankets.
So gross. So you can't go by their lifestyle before a woman is my point. So
The little
he has
stuff, yeah.
changed. He has sheets. And now... Oh man.
Oh man, that's good.
Surprises post-marriage.
Yeah. Biggest surprises learned post-marriage.
That depends on the year.
Yeah. I would just say how much, like, life changes. I mean, like, you kind of always know that, like, things are going to change. But like Bethany said, like, which segment of our marriage are we talking about? You know?
Early marriage. Are you
Right.
talking post, like,
Right.
right after?
Because we just
honeymoon?
celebrated 10 years.
Right.
So you got, I kind of like the pre-kids phase where you're like just the two of you. And then
you
you
don't
got...
know anything. But I will say
Go ahead.
that probably the biggest surprise was they do not think like you. Men and women think so
That's
differently.
a good one.
And it clicked with me when we had come home from camping and there was a big, I have this Rubbermaid tub that has all of our camping stuff in it. We were living in an apartment at the time. And so we had a storage unit in the basement, and that's where the camping stuff went. And so I just put this big tub next to the door, and I thought he would carry it down. That's where it went. Clearly, that's what I was putting it there for him to do. And he started putting his car keys on top of it because...
Well, like, I mean, to kind of clarify the story a little bit, like, I didn't know she had put it there for that purpose.
I just thought
and
they
like
knew.
when I walked in,
They would know.
I didn't even see it. I just
Except
saw
to put your
like
keys.
I just saw it as like a table to just use as like a table.
So he just started, that's where his car keys
I
were.
was just like...
And every time
like-
he did it, I would fume and fume. I didn't want to nag or say anything, but I don't think I even told him initially what I wanted
Well,
him
yeah,
to
because
do.
that was the thing. Like, the first... Like, if you would have just said, like, can you take that downstairs...
I don't know why I thought he'd just
Can
know
you just take that? Because the apartment complex had like a storage thing like 3 levels below in the basement that you could like lock your stuff in. Wasn't thinking of like, oh, she put that there so that I will take it downstairs and put it in the storage thing. I was just thinking like, we just haven't... wasn't thinking. That's the thing. I wasn't thinking at all. Like, I just walked in the door and it just wasn't even
time
in
I
my
just
view.
thought that he was just like being so rude, and when the trash would get too full, I would just like ignore it. I'm like, he's got to do it. He's gonna take the trash, and every time it was just like he wouldn't do it, and you were like, I'm not ignoring it on purpose to make you mad. I just didn't know. I just didn't see it.
I just didn't
see it.
Didn't see it.
It's like, oh.
Like,
All
genuinely, like, I wasn't like, oh, I saw it and then just said, I'll do it later.
Or she'll do it.
Yeah,
I thought you were leaving it for me.
Yeah, it really wasn't. I just don't see things the
So.
way you see things.
Right.
I really don't. Like, it's like, wow, I don't think about that.
Yeah. So, that's different.
That's a good one. Men and women think very differently.
And you assume they'll think exactly like you, but they don't.
Yeah.
So...
And then finally, she said, what's the best way to assess a person's lifestyle / home habits, considering you can't live together prior to marriage? I think that's just what dating's for, you know? You just kind of have to date and...
well, you're not going to take all of the risk out of marriage. You're not
Right.
going to take all of the, like...
Right.
You're not going to know everything about that person. You just need to know the major things. Do they love Jesus? Are they going to treat me well? Are we going to be able to get along good? You know, those sorts of big things. Do you have, you know, the same goals in mind? So, if they have sheets on their bed or not, or do they...
If they have sheets on their bed, marry them. Moral of the story here. No, that's good though. You won't know everything, and you have to know the big things, because marriage is about figuring it out together.
Yeah,
And
there's gonna be conflict,
Yeah.
so there's no way for you to know what those conflicts will be until you are living
the
together.
biggest thing you need to know is this a person that I can get through conflict with,
Yeah.
who's gonna be respectful, and like, can we love each other in the midst of trials?
Yeah.
If you got those things, that's good.
Yeah.
Right, next question. Tonita Quita Parks asked this. when should you stop praying over something? It is not that I don't trust God, I just don't want to spend too long praying for one thing. I just want to be able to be worry free and live the life I have now. Nobody really knows how their life is going to be because it is in God's will, not ours. So, when should you stop praying over something? You don't want to pray too much about one thing. I actually have a video I just did on this, so we won't spend too much time on this, but it's, yeah, like, can you pray too much about one thing? How can you pray about a relationship without becoming obsessive? So, you can look for that video, or I'll leave a link for it in the description below. But do you have any other thoughts on it? Not really. That's cool because I've already covered it in a video, so you can check that out. Alright, Kale Lover. This is actually funny. Kale Lover, when Kale Lover emailed me one time, I have it in the description below. I leave my email, if people want to leave me questions or whatnot. Kale Lover emailed me, and I forget why it was for, or what it was for, but anyway, I was just like in email mode, and I was just like just going through emails and like responding to as many as I possibly could. And I was like, "Hey Kale, thank you so much for this and that." And she responded back like a day or two later, and she's like, "Oh, thank you so much for your response. FYI, my name's not Kale." So what's up, Kale Lover? That was a good one. So, what do you do when you lose all desire to go to church? And also, what's your take on Christians that do therapy or take medication for an anxiety disorder or depression? Good questions. So really, two questions. First one is, what do you do when you lose all desire to go to church?
Well, it depends on why did you lose that desire? Where's that coming from? Are you not growing at that church? Is there something that has happened that has turned you off to it? Because obviously we're all human, so people make mistakes. The church is not perfect. But it is there for a purpose, and it is good to be connected to other believers and to go and be connected.
Yeah.
So
I agree with that. I mean, there is a time to change churches, and you don't want to do it quickly. You don't want to make that decision rashly. I don't think I've done a video on this, but I have an article on my website. I forget, it's like 6 good reasons to leave a church or something like that. So you can check that out on my website. I'll try to remember to link that below as well. But yeah, I think I would say the same thing. Like, figure out why you have a desire to not go to church. And then really work on that desire, because we know in the scriptures, we're told, for example, in I think it's Hebrews 13, someone will correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section, but it says, don't give up meeting together. So we're commanded in the scriptures to go to church. So you have to figure out, well, I know I'm commanded to go, so why don't I feel like going? And then work on that issue. Yeah. All right, and then what's your take on Christians that do therapy or take medication for an anxiety disorder or depression? Now, this is a really big topic that I've been putting off for a while, but I'm definitely going to do a video on it at some point because I get this question a lot. So I'll try to give you the short answer here, but I won't be able to cover everything because I think it's a really big question. Long story short, yes, I do think that it's good for Christians who need therapy or medication for mental health reasons to take advantage of whatever opportunity God's leading them to do to correct a certain problem. I think the part where you want to be really careful is you're just addressing the actual issue with the medication. This is where you want to talk to a doctor, obviously, but you just don't want to take medication or try to use some other outside thing to avoid a problem rather than use it to solve a problem. Rather than if you're taking medication for some other reason, that's where it would be a misuse. But if you have a chemical imbalance, then I believe God would lead you to correct that chemical imbalance, if possible, because that's the issue. That's the source of the issue. It's just like modern medicine, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you have an infection on your skin, would you take what's that word to get rid of infections?
An antibiotic.
An antibiotic. She's a nurse. So, an antibiotic. Would you take an antibiotic to get rid of it? Of course you would. So, that's the short answer. I'll do a whole nother video on it. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that one?
No, I just think, we live in a fallen world. Our bodies are not perfect, and we're going to have issues, and if there's a way that we can solve that issue with medicine, we do it all the time.
Right.
So.
And the way I'm trying to hold off from getting into like the theology and spiritual side of it, but a lot of people feel like it's a lack of faith or something, that if they're dealing with something that doesn't feel medical, like depression or anger or anxiety, like those are things that you see in scripture. So people are like, well, shouldn't I just do like a biblical approach to handle those things? And yes to that, of course. Like if it's a spiritual issue, then address the spiritual side. But my thing is that like we have to have a bigger picture of God's sovereignty, right? Because medication isn't outside of God's sovereign control. Right. So God's the one who has made all of these things to interact with our body. So like God's the one who directed some scientists at some point to figure out that this antidepressant works this way to affect your brain. Mm-hmm. Even though if that guy may have been an atheist, God's still the one in control of all of that, and right. He uses that. So, God could alter your brain chemistry in a miracle, or he could alter it through medication. But biblically, if it's being used for the glory of God, like that's God providing that means, because he's sovereign over everything in the world.
Right.
So, like I said, it's a big topic that I really want to dive into sometime, and I'll do that. Okay, next question. Regina says, I had already asked about being hidden by God. Can you elaborate on why God would hide you? And is it up to you to accomplish something during that season before God reveals you? I think Regina maybe has commented before, or maybe sent an email or something about asking about being hidden in God. So I think that's the reference there. To be honest, I don't really know what that means, hidden by God. I think what she's trying to say is that like you're being hidden so that a potential spouse won't find you. Like you'll stay single because God's hiding you. And it's not his timing for you to get married, so he's like keeping you single. I don't see any like biblical examples of that in the Bible. So I cannot elaborate on that topic. Is it up to you to accomplish something during that season before God reveals you? So that part of the question, I talk a lot about on this channel about like the difference between like waiting on God and doing nothing, and waiting on God and stepping out in faith. And I have a whole video on what's the best application for waiting on God to find a spouse. And actually, I wasn't planning on plugging this book, but that's what this book is actually about. We were doing another video and it was sitting right there. But anyway, this book is about how the sovereignty of God will actually empower you to trust him to step out. Even though God is in control of everything, and everything that happens is because God is doing it, that's not an excuse for us to sit by and just say, well, if God's going to do it, God's going to do it. Biblically, the opposite should be the effect of God is sovereign, he's in control, therefore I should have more confidence to step out in faith and actually do something. So there's not a one-size-fits-all in every situation. Eventually, if you want to get married, though, yes, you will have to do something and step out. because it won't just happen completely by itself. You'll have to participate in it. Do you both have same views over theological issues? Are there areas where you disagree? And if so, has that affected your relationships? Your relationship. So, our views theologically. What are your thoughts?
I think like what you had talked about, like the different tiers.
Yeah.
We're good on like the first two tiers. You know, there's nothing that we disagree about, like salvation issues. You know, we're pretty on the same page, which is why I think we work so well together, because that was attractive to me that like, you believed all those things, and you know we were pretty much on the same page with all of that stuff. I think there's probably areas that I haven't thought about as much as you have.
Yeah.
He does more in-depth studying, and
I think
so.
Yeah.
I think there's I'm sure there's topics that I haven't decided where I stand on things that aren't so important as far as
So I think it's also maybe a look into like how real life works with us anyway. Maybe some couples do sit around and talk theology.
Yeah.
But you know, every now and then something will come up and we'll have a talk about something. Maybe someone said at church or in the sermon, and we'll talk about like a theological matter.
Yeah.
But I would say most of our conversations about God and devotional and reading is a lot more focused on like loving God, like our behavior, our like things we are trying to work on.
Yeah.
And theology plays a role in that, all of that. But I think we more so focus on the living for Christ part in our Bible study when we do stuff together.
Yeah.
But there definitely are areas where we would differ a little bit, I'm sure.
Or just like, I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, right. Like she said, I study theology more. I mean, I went to seminary. That's not something that you do to that degree.
Right.
So yeah, are there areas where you disagree? And then if so, has that affected your relationship? No, not at all. Not at all. Whenever a topic comes up where I've studied a lot and I know that Bethany is still developing her views on it, I try not to push it.
Yeah.
Like, just to be vulnerable, one specific example would be like the whole idea of like Calvinism versus like Arminianism or Reformed theology versus less emphasis on the sovereignty and all that kind of thing. And so that's something that I've studied a lot about, and I have strong convictions on all of those things, but I don't force that onto Bethany, because you have to develop those things on your own, because you get to those deep levels of theological understanding by studying it, not because someone told you it.
Yeah.
And so you can't just arrive where I've come to view things because I said so. It would never work, because it's a challenge to get to really figure out those deeper questions, and not everyone's called to expound on those topics. Like, I feel like God has called me to study those things so I can help teach on those things, and not everyone has that same calling. So, but that's a good question. Hamilton Cunningham says, how should Christians deal with high conflict or unpleasant in-laws? Should in-laws be a consideration for Christians pursuing marriage? First off, Hamilton, why did you do that? Why did you do that? No, in all seriousness, we both genuinely have good relationships with our in-laws. Yeah. But I mean, it's not a big like jump to blah blah blah.
He's gonna edit this.
I'm nervous. There's been conflict every now and then. You just gotta talk about it. And how should Christians deal with high conflict or unpleasant in-laws? I will not use the word unpleasant in-laws, but I have had a little bit of conflict here and there just about certain things. And you have to talk about it. You have to be mature adults, and you just talk about it. And it's really weird and uncomfortable.
Well, and you have to think, too, like, your parents have never had, like, adult children, so they're
Right.
still figuring out how to step into their role as parents with adult children now as grandparents, and what is okay to say and what's not okay, and respecting the new family unit.
Right. The way we do things isn't the way that maybe it was done before or whatever.
So I think that it's just, you're probably going to go through some growing pains no matter what kind of in-laws you have. I don't know for sure, but I mean, I would think that that would be something that you kind of all have to grow in. But thankfully, we do have very good relationships with our in-laws.
We really do.
And everybody's very respectful, so I would definitely not consider ours high conflict or unpleasant. But there have been some growing pains.
Seasons. There was like a few seasons where I was like, okay, this is an issue. Yeah. No one wants to talk about it, but we just have to figure it out.
And it was also like us learning how to be parents. Like usually it was like, okay, now we have kids, so our family unit has changed, and then how do they step into that? So
yeah, and just to be transparent, because whenever you don't, you fill in the blanks worse than it really is. But yeah, when we first had kids, like it was just hard to figure out how to navigate visiting, how to navigate the household, because Bethany's family's from out of town, and it was just a stressful season of life for me because I was dealing with a lot of stuff with my job at that point, and it was all just kind of meshed together. So it was not a huge deal, but you just end up talking about it, figuring it out. To answer the second part of the question, should in-laws be a consideration for Christians pursuing marriage?
Depends on how unpleasant and high conflict they are.
Yeah, I mean, I would say to literally answer that question, no. But I would pay attention to how this person that you're dating is interacting with you and the in-laws or the future in-laws maybe, and all that kind of stuff. So I would pay attention to the person and how they interact with their parents, and are they gonna just constantly allow their parents to interject or take their parents' side. So I wouldn't say it's really about the in-laws. I would say it's more so about your spouse, and you want to pay attention to someone you're dating and how they interact with their parents, because that could reveal a lot of useful information. Okay, Halia Alves says, I'm just reading this directly. Okay, this is what she says. She says, "I'm ugly and I'm attracted only to good-looking men who can obviously do better and don't reciprocate my feelings. Does that mean that God has provided me with ugliness in order for me to be single forever? I really wouldn't marry an ugly guy, no matter how much of an amazing person he might be, because I wouldn't feel attracted. And attraction is key in a romantic relationship, right? What are your thoughts on this?"
I think that's a double standard.
I think that's a double standard. I agree. I have a video on that about why there's double standards between men and women, like with sexuality and sexual purity and things like that, where I focus on how it usually happens where men get a free pass and women don't. But I would say that that's a double standard.
Yeah, no matter how much of an amazing person he might be.
Right.
I don't know. I think you might need to do some soul searching if that's the only thing you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, I would just say, even though Bethany is immensely attracted to me, even when I do something stupid, I can't tell she's attracted to me. It goes out the window, people. The good looks just don't help at that point.
They don't help.
If you do something stupid and you say something that's rude, those good looks aren't going to help you. So I would say that physical attraction, I mean, it's important, but it's not. It's
the
not
only thing,
not
for
something you're
sure.
gonna want to base a lot on because it just in the
And
moment.
everybody gets wrinkles. Let's
Right.
just be honest.
Right. Beauty is fleeting and charm is deceptive,
Say.
but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. So Proverbs 31. We talked about that one already, so you can check out that other video I have on physical attraction. I think that might help. Clara. Hi, Mark. I wanted to know if you could have time to say more about the missions trip you had in Liberia. What did you do practically in a day, teaching kids? Kind of a long post here. Lastly, what would your advice be for someone who wanted to serve orphans on their own as a command from Jesus? So, kind of a long post there. But in summary, Mercy Ships was where we served. Me and Bethany both did the missions trip there. We actually met there. Again, I'll link to that video if you want to check out more about what we did. But specifically, me, I was 19 at the time, and so I really wasn't qualified to do a ton. So I actually served in what's called the galley, and so which is the kitchen. So Mercy Ships is a floating hospital basically, where they take first world technology into a third world country, usually in the West Africa. And so there's super trained people there, like Bethany, who was an RN, and she was doing stuff in nursing and in the operating room. There's doctors and everything you would need medically. They volunteer their time. And then there's other people there who are like me, who didn't have medical skill, but needed to just do all the things like food's got to get cooked. You know, like if there's no food, people can't eat, then people can't have surgeries. And so that's what I did there. And it was cool because I did 5 days on, working in the kitchen, serving the crew. And then I would have 5 days off when then I could go into Liberia and do whatever I felt led to do. So it was really cool. I had structure, but then a lot of free time to get involved in other things that I wanted to do off the ship. And that's where I served the orphans more so. And that's what we would do in our free time. Mm-hmm. Go and visit the orphanages and do different projects with them. I would say about serving on your own, if you mean literally serving on your own, I wouldn't recommend like just trying to do everything on your own, because it's a huge endeavor. And as you read like in Romans 12, for example, you know, the body of Christ has many different functions. We all have different skills and gifts. So you won't be able to do everything on your own. You need support. You need financial support. You need counseling support. You need just guidance on how to do all those things. It's complicated to go to another country. Got to get all kinds of shots. You got to get all these laws. So it's not something I would recommend even trying on your own. I would get linked up with someone who's done it before. Look into some other organizations. Talk to your church. That's what comes to my mind.
Yeah.
Okay. Commander Cody says, is there such a thing as the friend zone? And if so, can it be permanent? I have a video on the friend zone, so I'll link to that below. I'll let Bethany add anything.
I would say, yeah, you can return from there, because maybe they just didn't see how amazing you are at first, and they just pushed you off to the friend zone. But then as the closer you get, they may have different eyes for you later. So I wouldn't give up.
Yeah. I would say it's wise. I talk about this in the video, but this other video I did on it, it can be permanent, so you don't want to waste too much time, but nothing wrong with giving it a good try and making sure. Right. I like the idea of making sure when it comes to relationships, because
you don't want to have regrets.
Yeah, like if it's not going to work out, well, it's not going to work out anyway.
Yeah.
So you might as well just go for it.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to look back and go, I wonder if I would have tried harder.
Yeah.
If she would have liked me.
Right.
Just go for it. That's the best way to find out if it can change.
Yeah.
Okay, Jonathan. How do I know that she's the one? I'm in a Christian relationship for 7 months now. I've prayed numerous times. I've prayed numerous times for God to remove her if it's not meant for us to be together. And so far, things keep getting better? Is this a sign or the enemy trying to trick me? Well, I would focus on 3 qualities that I talk about a lot. 3 qualities every Christian spouse needs. They need to be a Christian, they need to be bearing fruit for Christ and showing the evidence of their salvation, as it talks about in Galatians 5. And thirdly, they need to be ready to fulfill the biblical roles of marriage. If they can do those 3 things, then I would say you might as well just keep going about dating them. And if you enjoy them and you're enjoying the relationship and they have those 3 qualities, Christian, bearing fruit, and they're ready to be a husband or wife according to the biblical standards, then I don't see, why God would say no. But I'm not God, so I can't speak for him in your situation. But just biblically speaking, I don't see a reason to stop. But you certainly have to get the Holy Spirit's personal leading as well. So, yeah, just keep going and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, you have to look at the fruit of it. You can't wait for an angelic visitation on everything.
Yeah, not always this over spiritually answer there.
Right.
Okay. Hi, Mark. What's the biggest challenge, spiritual and otherwise, you've faced so far, and what helped you get through it? What is your mindset or thought process during that time? What advice would you give to anyone currently going through something similar? Geez. The biggest challenge? There's so many big challenges. Like, I remember we had this couple over a long time ago. I think it was even before we had kids. And they were newly married. And they were having a hard time in their marriage. And they were talking to us, kind of like a little bit older of a couple. And the girl just kind of was like, so, what's the hardest thing you guys have dealt with in your marriage? And me and Bethany said some random answer that wasn't true, because it was like, you can't handle the reality of that question, you know what I mean? So sometimes I think it's easy to see someone on camera I get to edit all my videos and cut out everything and it's easy to, the biggest challenge in my life, you guys probably wouldn't look at me the same afterwards or something, I don't know. But I will say, personally, when I was growing up, my parents divorced because my dad had an affair. So that really affected me for a long time. It affected the way I interacted with Bethany. I had to really work through that. So that was probably I don't know if I said the biggest, but certainly one of the biggest things that I had to work through. Just dealing with all the fallout of that feeling. Lots of feelings of betrayal that really weren't based in anything in reality, but they were based in the past and just projecting that in wrong ways. So that was difficult. My mindset through it was that God will help me through and deal with it if it never changes, or he'll change it if I keep trying and keep working with him. And praise the Lord, after a lot of work and just prayer and counseling and different things, I don't struggle with those feelings like I used to, about feeling betrayed or questioning things or being weird and paranoia sometimes. Those things have passed for me. So yeah, what advice would I give anyone currently going through something similar? Don't ever give up, and use your pain as a launching pad towards God rather than the crash site that you look at as that's where it all ended. The hard things that happen in your life should be your opportunity to grow with God and can be part of your glory story, so to speak, rather than this part of your demise. So I would say see it as a launching pad rather than a crash site. Mm-hmm. So, Weenie Boys 2. That's audit. Weenie Boys 2 is a faithful commenter and interacts a ton on this channel. So what's up? Good to get your question. She says, how did your anniversary video go over? So I'm assuming what she means is like the video I posted for you. What were your thoughts? Did you enjoy it?
I did enjoy it. That is one, like, pictures and memories are like, they're my thing. So he definitely nailed it. I have, like, the kids will never wonder what they looked like or things they did when they're kids. And I have so many picture books and all kinds of memories and stuff. So
Yeah.
it was perfect to make a video of our relationship over the past 10 years. No, it was really great. That was probably the best thing you could have ever gotten me on our anniversary. So
Yeah. I agree. It was pretty awesome. No, I'm just kidding. We had a great anniversary. We had a ton of fun. My sister took the kids, so we got to spend some great alone time.
We got to go out to dinner.
We went to dinner, and then
breakfast.
we woke up the next day. We went on a run, and then we went to breakfast. And it was just a great time to not watch cartoon shows.
Yeah.
We watched movies meant for grown adults.
Without cartoon characters.
Without cartoon characters in them. And it was great. Fantastic 10-year anniversary.
Yes.
Well, guys, unfortunately, there are some questions I didn't get to go to, but
I'm sleepy.
yeah, we're gonna have to wrap it up. I'm sure this video is epically long, probably the longest I've ever done. So if you watched the whole thing, congratulations. If you didn't, I don't blame you. Give it a thumbs up either way. Thanks so much for watching, guys. God bless.